Call this meeting to order. It is a Thursday afternoon, a wonderful, cool Thursday afternoon, Thursday, September 22nd, 2016. I'll open it up. Would somebody like to read the public comment section, please, so we can get going? Any takers? Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. The board takes public comment on all items in the regular agenda. Public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on an item not on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the board at this time. The board may request an item to be placed on a future agenda or for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment.
Okay, so if there's no public comment, let's move to the consent agenda. Consideration of approving the July 14, 2016 meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to read those minutes and review them? If we have, then I'll entertain a motion that we approve the minutes.
So move.
Did you catch that? Okay. Okay. Any other discussion, comments, or questions about the minutes? Any public comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Looks like the motion passes and minutes are approved. Moving right along, let's move over to the regular agenda, which is the consideration of recommending removal of a few trees near the International Water Lily Collection at Civic League Park. And Roger looks like he's ready to take the bull by the horns and get us going.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Roger Havlock, Park Senior Manager with the City of San Angelo. As y'all are well aware, we've been through this item a couple of times. It was in conjunction with the conceptual master plan for the Botanical Garden of Civic League Park. And so this time, since this particular portion was tabled at the last meeting, we wanted to bring it back to you again for hopefully action on whether to approve or not approve the removal of a few of the select trees. And just to, I'll go through this slide very quickly. One of the reasons why we had this issue come up is because of maintenance issues with the lily ponds, which again spurred this discussion of removal of trees. Although no tree health or safety issues have been identified, we do recognize the maintenance concerns that Ken Landon and his staff has for the lily ponds. And tree removal and tree planting remains an important part of the approved conceptual botanical garden master plan that you all approved last time for the concept. And again, the board recommendation will require council action. So again, we wanted to bring it back to you for discussion and hopefully action, either approved or disapprove of removal of those trees. And again, this is just a map showing some of the portions of the conceptual master plan for the botanical garden. We talked about the trails. And again, the trees that we're referring to is the pecan tree just to the south of the lily ponds. Again, I met with each of you at different times down at the ponds, I believe. And so y'all were able to see which ones we're referring to. You have the big pecan tree. That's just another view of that tree. Then we had 3 arborvitaes. More importantly, the live oak and the red oak, which again we're talking about here and here, are the main ones of concern. And again, this is just another view. You have the red oak that's here on the far end, and you have the live oak that's here. The lacy oak here would remain, and again, we even discussed at the last meeting that we could justify through our park staff to possibly remove this arborvitae here, and possibly the ones that are encroaching even on these trees here, and consider the removal of some of the other ones that were in that area. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. We do, during the public comment of this, we do have Mr. John Begno, retired extension horticulturist from Tom Green County here. He would like to say a few words during that portion.
Are there any questions for Roger at this particular time?
Roger, when you have tree issues or shrub issues in any of the other parks in town, do you come to us for permission to treat them?
No, that's what we had visited about, I believe, at the last meeting. Again, depending on whether there are safety issues at hand, It could be related to aesthetics, but more importantly, safety, possibly the health of the tree or shrub. We make that decision. With these specific trees that we're discussing, it kind of evolved out of a meeting that we had with a concerned citizen group there at the site. And we felt it important enough because, again, we don't, for those particular 3 trees, the live oak, the red oak, and the pecan, there's not any type of safety concern or health concern for the tree at this point. But as part of the conceptual master plan for Botanical Garden, we felt it important to include, because I believe if we move forward with that process, and again, I think I've discussed this in the last 2 meetings, you know, from the park staff point of view, if we do end up removing those trees, we would want to come back with other types of vegetation, maybe smaller in size, maybe not as trashy as some of the other ones may be to cause maintenance issues. We wouldn't just want to leave a void in any of those areas. And so we would try to treat it appropriately. Even if the botanical garden didn't come to be because there wasn't enough funds or things of that nature, we would still, over time, want to mitigate the situation with additional trees in the park to, again, offset what's been taken away, if y'all approve.
Anybody else? No? Thank you, Roger. I appreciate it. I believe we have some public comment.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm John Begno, retired county extension agent for Tom Green County, and I appreciate the opportunity to present some information that Allison Watkins is in full support of. And she asked me to come by and read a letter, and I hope that y'all had received that in your package, and then we'll discuss anything that you might have. I'll start the letter off. I would like to submit this statement to provide my full support of the proposal regarding Civic League Park. It is my recommendation that the proposal to remove the indicated trees be accepted. In order to promote the continued success of the water lily collection and to hopefully grow the park into a botanical garden. I enjoy the park and the water lily collection immensely from a personal standpoint as a citizen that lives in the neighborhood, and also professionally as a horticulturist. It is a great asset and provides a lot of educational opportunities. It is my opinion as a horticulturist and certified arborist that the trees indicated for removal interfere aesthetically and or functionally with the water lily collection. From a horticulture standpoint, it is important to remember the function of a garden or park and consider each plant and whether it adds or detracts from the main goal of the park. While I do love trees and understand that there are always reservations when removing any, the main feature of this garden is the water lily collection, and I think it would be best to remove plants that interfere with the operation of the water lily pools. Respectfully, Allison Watkins, County Extension Agent, Horticulture, Tom Green County. And I have to say, I fully agree with Allison. I wish she was here today, but she has a prior commitment. But I highly respect her. She's one of the brightest young horticulturist, and we're fortunate to have her, and we're really fortunate to have her support of our Parks Department and all that you guys do and Roger and Carl do, and they make an excellent team. So I fully agree with her comments, and if you have any questions of me, I'll be glad to try to answer them. If not, I'll just turn it back to Roger.
Are
Anybody
there any
have-
questions? Looks like we don't have any questions, Mr. Bagno. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is it? Go ahead, Roger. Okay. Okay. Any other comment in reference to this action item? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had this issue, we've had this topic in front of us now for 2 meetings. This will be the 3rd. So we need to take action. I would like to bring it forward, and I'll entertain a motion that we approve the recommending of the removal of the few trees near the International Water Lily Collection at Civic League Park as presented by Mr. Havelock.
Second.
You'll move for me? You'll make the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Christina, second? Did you get that? Okay. I apologize if I was confusing anybody. You good? Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion, comments, or questions before we take it to a vote? Any public comment at this point? Any further public comment? Okay, let's take it to a vote, and then I think what we should do so we can, yes,
Maybe a hand vote?
I appreciate, yes, sir. So what I'm going to do is recommend that we start to my right and move down to my left, and if you can signify by saying yes or no, so we can, if we need to mark it down for the record, so we can have an accurate vote. So if you will please state your vote for the record, yes or no, or abstain?
Yes.
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 No.
Abstain.
So it looks like I voted. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstention. Okay? So it looks like it carries.
We have a recommendation to take to council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Roger, hey, thanks for all your help and for all your time, and I appreciate the Water Lily Collection individuals and organization, and thank you for all your time and all your efforts, and I appreciate Mr. Begno and for Miss Allison Watkins' letter. So thanks to everybody that was a part of this and for everybody that worked on it, and thanks to the board. We had good discussion, and it was a good vote, and we'll see what happens. So, okay, great. Let's move on and let's go to item number 3, which is the discussion of adopting an ordinance to limit smoking in the parks in order to give staff direction regarding the matter. And I think Dawn has asked to bring this issue up, so I'll let Dawn kind of take it over from here.
I don't know that I actually asked. I pointed out the issue a couple of times in following around the internet, like I am apt to do occasionally. I noticed that Dallas and Fort Worth and Houston and a few other cities have all passed from their Parks and Rec Board and city ordinances to limit smoking in their city parks. In Dallas and Fort Worth, as a matter of fact, it's not only the city parks, but it's also city golf courses, and anything that is maintained by the city park system has smoking limitations now by ordinance assigned to it in that particular area. So my interest was, and I've passed a few articles around via email to everybody.
Yes, sir.
Is this something that we might be interested in? Something that, in fact, my questions were mostly pointed to Carl and his staff. Is this something that you notice at the various parks? Is it something that maybe we should look at, maybe we should talk about? And that was how it came about.
Great. I think that's a great topic, and
There's
I think
nothing worse than an anti-smoker or a former smoker, and I, claim to be guilty of being one. So, in my own mind, there's nothing at all wrong with a smoking ban.
Okay, Carl, you want to give us a little bit of direction, see what you think? Or you
To that.
feel,
Um,
lead the segue?
Yeah, I can do that. Carl asked me to kind of give a summary of this item. As you may or may not know, our current ordinance prohibits the smoking in enclosed public places, so that does not include most facilities within parks. It's not just Dallas and Fort Worth they prohibit it in all places. Abilene actually prohibits smoking at all of their city facilities, including parks, golf courses. They do have an exception for private boats on the lake, so if you want to smoke out in the middle of the lake in your boat, you are able to do that. I also looked at a couple other cities just to kind of get a general idea, and I think these cities really give you an idea of some of the options that might be available if we consider going down this road. I looked at Midland, Odessa, Killeen, Denton, and Abilene, and as I said, Abilene, of course, bans it in all facilities, all city facilities. And when I was in Abilene, I know that became an issue for parks workers who wanted to smoke and where they should go, and it can create issues when you have a total ban like that with employees. Midland bans smoking in all city buildings, but again, it's just a building. If you're outside, it's perfectly acceptable to smoke. Odessa bans smoking in city buildings, but then also within 50 feet of park amenities. So that includes, as they list, soccer fields, baseball fields, volleyball courts, basketball courts, playgrounds, aquatic centers, swimming pools. So if you're just in the general open park area, you're able to smoke. If you're within 50 feet of any of those places that people tend to congregate, you're not allowed to smoke. Colleen, again, has in their facilities, but then also prohibits it inside fenced areas of public swimming pools and around playgrounds and public parks. And then Denton is illegal in any facility, but they just describe that as something that is vertical in nature. So it would also include any kind of covered picnic areas, not just enclosed buildings, but generally in parks you can smoke in Denton. So the direction we would look for is, if you want to provide any direction to council on an opinion on whether or not you want to change the ordinance, what we would do is we would take that to council probably as just a discussion item first, and if they wanted to move forward with an ordinance change, which takes 2 readings.
Okay, let's mull it over and talk it over. What is everybody thinking? I think it's a great idea, and for me personally, I think that it'd be really hard to distinguish, 50 feet, so many, where you want to do it. Do you exempt the lakes? Do you exempt certain? But I think anywhere, for sure, where there was children or playgrounds or any of those areas where it's common areas where there's children involved, definitely. But then you get into that whole mixture of, does this make the criteria or not? So probably in the best interest, and it being easier as an ordinance to enforce, would make it just across the board, like what Abilene or Dallas or Fort Worth, some of the other places have. That'd be those are my thoughts.
I like finding a way to do this. I do know that one issue to think about is my dad is a pastor, and he's told me throughout my life that when he goes to like hospitals to visit people or places that have smoking bans, he tends to have to walk through a cloud of smoke now instead of it having been easier before, even though we all support that ban inside the hospitals and stuff. He now has to walk through a cloud of it because everyone's standing in some concentrated area at the entrance. And so that's something that, to me, like, how would we deal with that? How do we guarantee that, like, a family's not walking in through the main entrance to the park or whatever through a cloud of smoke?
Gloria, any thoughts?
I don't like smoking. I'm allergic to it, and I would ban it from the earth if it were left up to me.
Okay, good. Okay, anybody else?
Parks, especially where children are at.
I know that I'm on board with a full-out ban. I mean, I agree with it not being around the children and around maybe pavilions and things similar to the, one of them had it for pavilions and playgrounds and things of that. But I see it somewhat as a limitation of, we could potentially be telling people, okay, if you're a smoker and you want to smoke when you're out, if you want to come out and walk the Red Arroyo Trail, make sure you don't smoke when you're there. Granted, that's probably against what they're trying to achieve, but I hate to put that limitation on somebody who's out there and they're out in a complete open air area that probably has less of an effect on the people around them than it would be underneath maybe where everybody's congregating. I understand that it's hard to limit that as well, but I just hate the idea that we're excluding these people. I know it's a pretty small, what's the thing, like 20% of people smoke or less. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but I know it's pretty small in comparison to what it used to be. But I hate to limit those people from being able to use stuff just because, you're saying come out and use it, but don't smoke when you're here, when that's part of their life right now.
I remember a couple of years ago when I'm sure we all remember when they started the smoking ban in bars and drinking establishments, and we were all told that, within 2 years there wouldn't be a bar in town because they'd all be run out of business because nobody could smoke. And if you look at some of the profit statements and drinking statements here that they post lately, it's sky high. It hasn't. In fact, new bars are opening most every week. It hasn't changed a bit. So not to counter, your thought, but it doesn't necessarily go bad when you ban smoking like everybody thinks.
Right. With those guys, that thought came to mind as well. But with those guys, a lot of them have a pavilion or a patio that they can now go to and do that. We're pretty much saying that you can't smoke here at all. With that, if you want to do a full-out ban, not that we have a designated area. I understand the problem with certain designated areas being very smoky, but a lot of those bars, that was their adaptation, was here we had this nice patio or pavilion, if you want to call it even that, sometimes go out there and smoke.
Oh, no, what I was saying is I'm in support of like a designated area. I just so that it's not like moving people over to the left one step, you know what I mean? And so like if we gave them a designated area, you know not to walk through that area if you're allergic. You know, I just want to, instead of moving everybody over like outside of the park, we can send them over to an area so you can smoke if you enjoy smoking, or if you're allergic to it and need to get away, that gives you the opportunity to know you're away from it.
What does park staff think, Carl?
I was gonna say, from a
The
logistical
guys that are in the
standpoint,
parks. Roger, you got any thoughts?
I think we both have opinions. They may not be the same, but I kind of don't lean towards an all-out ban. I kind of think we need, in my opinion, to designate either smoking areas or ban just particular areas like playgrounds and pavilions and sports complexes. So I hadn't thought really about the designated area. So we could add with signage, you know, basically you can't smoke anywhere in this park, but if you're in this area, you can't smoke wherever the sign is. That might work.
well, if you're at the lake, and the lake's a really big place, and you have to go to maybe 1 or 2 areas to go smoke,
Yeah.
that may be, from a logistical standpoint,
Yeah.
pretty hard to enforce, and also unrealistic as an approach.
It would work
So-
in smaller places.
Yes.
You know, one thing that a lot of these ordinances do allow is smoking in private vehicles. So if you go to the park in your private vehicle, you can always go to your car to smoke. And so that's one area that everybody is kind of guaranteed the ability to smoke.
Teresa, I have a question about vaping. Is that what it's called? Is that considered smoking?
It really depends on the way our ordinance is drafted, it's not considered smoking. Most ordinances, when they were drafted before vaping became such a big deal. So unless something is actually on fire and burning, it doesn't constitute smoking under the smoking ordinance.
Could that be applied?
It could be.
Interesting. Good point.
I'm not a smoker. I really don't like smoking, but I just feel this is overstepping.
Okay.
Roger Havlock with Parks. I feel kind of like Bitsy feels. If you're going to, I would think we could maybe go to something where, as one of the cities had done, maybe within so many feet of certain amenities, that we know we would have a high concentration of children or folks that are congregated, that might be appropriate. But again, enforcing is going to be another thing as well. And so,
Do we have any
enforcement.
information on how long these cities have had their ban, and if it's going well or not well, or have
I
they?
know that Abilene's ban went into effect in 2014. And I was there and actually drafted their smoking ordinance, and it was very similar to here, that everybody thought that it was the end of the world and every place was going to, close down, and that the city parks would never get any use, and people just adjusted. Even the pavilions, a lot of families rent those, and they still rent those. But again, smoking is one of those areas where enforcement is primarily based on complaint. I don't anticipate we're going to have park workers roaming around as the smoking patrol. And so if somebody's, bothering somebody else, that's when we get a complaint, when we enforce.
So what did they do about the workers?
They used the vehicle exception for them, and they designated a place around some of the storage facilities in city parks that would no longer be accessible to the public, so they were no longer considered public areas of the park, and allowed them to be smoking areas for employees.
Okay. Well, we got some good discussion, and I think if maybe we bring it back with maybe a proposed draft to see kind of what direction, or should we give a little bit more direction as far as a draft, or is that or do we want to go forward at all? What are we thinking here?
Why don't we ponder it for another meeting and work at it from there?
Okay. That okay with you? Yes. Everybody else?
If we ponder it and everybody gets a chance to look at it and read around and see what
Okay.
everybody thinks, talk it up in your neighborhood, and then
any
bring
information-
it back and see where we go.
Yes, perfect. So if there's information that maybe that you have that if you can forward to Carl, and then we can digest it and look through it and
Is there any information you would want us to bring to you?
I'm interested as far as if they're collecting any kind of fees and et cetera, where does that go back to? Does it go back to the Parks and Recreation? Does it go to the city? Where does it go to?
For the citations for smoking,
Yes.
it goes into the general fund in every city I've ever worked in. And, you know, court fees are often allocated by the state to some extent, so a portion of that's gonna go to the state, but the remainder goes into general fund.
good question. Okay, so let's get some information, digest it a little bit further, and then bring it back and we'll give a little bit better direction and guidance for hopefully, maybe for a proposed ordinance in the future. Okay, thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. Okay, looks like we need to do an update on the River Fest, which is
Next two items are just quick updates. On Riverfest, we held it last weekend, and overall, it was a success. We estimate about 13,000 attendees. Still don't quite know yet how financially it was a success. We had new sponsorships, but we also picked up some new expenses. We had a concert Friday night, which we did have to cancel because there was a lightning storm that eventually hit the river stage about 30 minutes after we had canceled the concert. Saturday activities were well attended. The Saturday night concert was the biggest we've had to date yet with Riverfest, with about 3,200 attendees. And it also rained after the concert, thankfully after the concert. Next week, we're going to have a meeting to talk about lessons learned and look forward to planning next year's Riverfest. We might start calling it Rainfest.
that's awesome. Okay, we'll lead on into the next one.
Next item is really just project updates. Kind of out of order, but on 29th Street Sports Complex, the RFP is ready from purchasing. It should go out early in October. Seems like it's taken a while on that, but we're looking for it to go out in a couple of weeks. The design for the Texas Bank Sports Complex, the restroom concession, the specifications have been done by Kenny Frankie Architects, and those are going to purchasing, so the front end of the specifications can be added, so we can package that out and get it out probably within about 3 to 4 weeks. The dog park fence installation should be starting, it may have started today. I'll check tomorrow to make sure. It has been delayed because of all the rain, which is a good reason to delay it, but
There were guys out there working today.
you saw them? Yay, they started. Bradford Park renovation, that project is complete. We handed it over to the school district. They were able to use it first day of school. Middle Concho boat ramp project, all the funding is in place now. Got the grant agreement completed and executed, and we're entering the design phase of that project. Brentwood Park is the next in-house renovation project. It's kind of like the Bradford Park project. The next one's Brentwood. We're going to start having the neighborhood meetings for that project early in October. We basically have a meeting either at the nearest school, invite the public to come, talk about the project, let them know what the options are. And if you're interested in coming to see how those work, we can invite you. And then once we have at least a couple of meetings with the neighborhood, they give us direction, then we go back to the design and finish design and then start the project probably next spring. That's all we have. Unless you had any questions.
No? Any questions about these items here on any updates? No? No, sir. Well, man, we're moving right along. Okay, so future agenda items. Anybody want to see anything in the future? I know for myself, I would like to kind of get an update on the multi-use recreational facility, get an update on that. And then I always like to try to get an update or a follow-up or a review of the summer, since I know that Diana and Brent are not here this week.
That's correct.
So if we can just kind of follow up with that, get some summer numbers. Anybody else? Wow. Okay, wow. Right, you're right, record time. 30 minutes, okay. Well, we're going to motion to adjourn then. Is there anything else that we need to do? Anybody, I just feel like we're leaving something out there, but if not, motion to adjourn. Great meeting, everybody. Thank you.